All right, welcome to today's session on the pyramid model preschool practices training series. We are working today on teaching social emotional skills part one. We will have three parts and we will be breaking up just different aspects of teaching social emotional skills over the next couple of months. And so with the pyramid model, this is the structure for the different tiers on how to support children using social emotional development. So at the very base, we have those universal practices that we are using with all of our children. And those are going to include making sure that we've got those nurturing and responsive relationships, as well as those high quality supportive environments. And then we move up the pyramid onto the next tier, which is targeted social emotional supports. And that's where we're going to be diving into starting today. This is we want to teach social emotional development for all children in our classroom. But when we look at the targeted social emotional supports, these are going to be for some of our children who need a little bit further support and assistance, maybe identifying emotions or maybe identifying a breathing strategy for self-regulation, and we'll go over those practices. So we do want to think through this particular quote. So the use of response strategies is intended to reduce the likelihood of challenging behavior, but it will not be effective without careful and intentional attention to teaching social skills and emotional competencies. So we want to note that response strategies are strategies that occur after a behavior has happened. If we're not intentionally teaching social skills and emotional competencies, we will be responding to challenging behavior instead, because we are giving children the tools that they need to behave differently. So we often want to jump in supporting children at the most intensive levels of without focusing on the necessary social and emotional skills that we can teach. So our responses to challenging behavior, which is going to be discussed throughout these training sessions, will be most effective when we work on prevention of challenging behavior and then promotion of social emotional competencies. Hi, Marissa. Happy to have you on today. All right, so since this is such a small group, we'll just do this together as a group, and you can either unmute yourself and share your thoughts on this, or engage with us in the chat box. So we want to think through, why is it important to teach social emotional skills to young children, as well as thinking about what social emotional skills should we be teaching them. So let's start with the first one. Why should we be teaching these skills in early childhood settings? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Um, uh, what comes to mind is they are probably not familiar with how they're feeling. So we need to help them learn to understand what they're feeling, how they're feeling, help them to have words to put to those feelings. And then that way they will be able to share those feelings with the teachers, with their family, with their peers, so that others are understanding how they're feeling and helping them to understand why they're feeling that way.
Absolutely, Gloria. Yeah, that emotional literacy component is critical. If we're able to teach them to identify emotions in themselves, then we're able to teach them how to regulate those emotions in themselves, as well as being able to see what those emotions look like on other people and how to engage with their peers who might be feeling a certain way. Thanks, Gloria. Ms. Casey said to start learning empathy for others and to identify what they are feeling. Absolutely. Thank you, Casey. And so I think within that question, both Gloria and Casey responded with some of the things about what are we needing to teach social emotional skills, what social emotional skills should we be teaching to this age group. And so we'll see emotional literacy, we will see self-regulation, we will see anger management. We'll also think through some social skills like peer conflict resolution, you know, problem solving skills, and some friendship skills. Today, we're really going to focus on kind of the basics of social emotional, and we'll also talk about some cultural things to note as we go through. Anybody else have any thoughts on why or what social emotional skills we should be teaching?
As far as the literacy goes, I know it's important to teach the basic literacy skills of those emotions first. Like mad, sad, those basic ones, and then we can build on that and give them more vocabulary, more synonyms to go with those so that they actually understand clear what they're feeling. It needs to be age appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to have a nice balance between both positive and negative emotions being taught. I think sometimes we really get tied up into teaching what mad and sad look like and how to regulate those. But excited is also an emotion that can cause, running or, big movements that might be challenging. So it is important to label those too. Thanks, Gloria. I'm glad to see you back here month after month. All right. So in addition to the teaching of social emotional skills that we were just talking about, there is some research that indicates that when a child enters kindergarten with strong social skills, this has a huge positive impact on their outcomes as an adult. And so these are going to include things like more likely to graduate from high school on time, more likely to get a college degree and have a full-time job. They're less likely to be arrested, engage in substance abuse, or be on a waiting list for public housing. I don't have the research tied to this, but why do you guys think that these are some of the adult outcomes of teaching children those social emotional skills? So why do we think they're going to graduate? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that they're going, we can be intelligent academically, but if we're not intelligent socially and emotionally, we're not going to be able to engage in the world with others in a really positive manner. And you have to be able to learn how to maneuver through the world, through the people, in order to be successful. It's not just about academic intelligence, or you're not going to be successful in your job. If you can't get along with your coworkers, you don't know how to positively express how you're feeling, or to understand how they're feeling, you're just going to struggle really bad in life. And then your emotions come out and can be very detrimental ways where you do end up harming someone, not because you wanted to, but you never were taught how to regulate those emotions, how to properly deal with, when you're extremely angry or frustrated with someone and then you decide to harm them. That's the way it comes out with small children. And so if we're not taught those skills of how to, have deep breathing, to walk away,
Mhm.
we can learn to interact with the world in a negative way and not a positive way, and therefore fail at being able to be relatable to others.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Gloria. And Casey said they are skills that are growing as they grow and they need to start understanding at a young age. Yeah, absolutely. I always like to make the statement about thinking about, think about your loved ones and think about your friends and think about that one person who maybe gets really angry very quickly or has huge, emotional responses to maybe very small stimuli, and think about the people who are incarcerated, and think about how much the world would look differently and the world would change if they knew how to properly express their feelings or if they knew how to properly problem solve with other human beings. And so those are the skills that are critical, for our children to grow up well balanced. Anybody else have any other thoughts on this? I know Casey, I saw you kind of briefly unmute us a minute ago. I just want to give you the opportunity if you have anything else to say to go ahead and do so. All right. So then we are going to think about this aspect, within the context of being culturally responsive and making sure that we are including families in this process. So it's important to know, that the secondary or that prevention level of the pyramid model is going to include the teaching of social emotional skills to all of the children, but we're going to make sure that we have very explicit instruction for some of our children who might need more focused instruction. And so in our early childhood programs, all young children will require adult guidance and instruction in order to learn how to regulate strong emotions, as well as being able to play cooperatively with their peers, make sure that they're using social problem solving strategies. But some children will need that additional systemic and focused instruction in order to learn specific social emotional skills. So they might need more individualized instruction, including some strategies on identifying and expressing emotion, self regulation, social problem solving, initiating and maintaining interactions, cooperative responding, strategies for handling disappointment and anger, and friendship skills. So, just like our ABCs, just like our one, two, threes, math, everything that we teach, social emotional skills have to be very intentionally taught. And just like our academics, some of the children are going to need more support in those social emotional skills. So we also want to make sure that we are sharing and receiving information from families in order to support teaching social emotional skills in our early childhood settings. Through an effective family school partnership, children really do benefit massively. And we can share ideas and materials with our families, and our families can share materials and ideas with us. And when we collaborate and connect with one another, it's really going to make for a wonderful partnership. All right, so social skills and social emotional health do look very differently, across cultures. And honestly, every family approaches these skills in a different way. So, as teachers, we're going to strive to support the development of culturally responsive social and emotional skills and work with families to understand what those skills look like and what skills they feel are most important for their child to achieve. So, our main goal is to enable children to use those social skills, and to develop a meaningful relationships with their peers, family members, and other people in their community. So, think about what are some social skills that families might feel are important for their children to learn. It's a small group today, Gloria. I think it's gonna be me and you.
I was just gonna say they need to, I would think that they would want them to learn, the social skills of how being polite to one another, manners. You know, at home, that is a big thing that we teach is manners, saying please and thank you. You know, here in the South, we say yes, ma'am, no,
Mhm.
ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. Um, yeah, that's what comes to mind as far as at home. And then I think the sharing part probably comes more from school.
Yeah. But it is going to be important to also find out, what is appropriate at home compared to school, because, like you said, down here in the South, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am is polite. But honestly, some places in the North, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am is actually offensive. And so that would be really important for you as a teacher to know. If we're supporting a child saying yes ma'am, no ma'am, but their family finds that to be disrespectful, that could be a concern. And, a lot of us here, eye contact is considered to be polite, and it's expected for some people that to make eye contact with children. But in some Asian cultures, eye contact is actually disrespectful between a young child and an older adult. So, having these conversations with our families and finding out what kind of social skills they want us to support or to teach is going to be really important to have, and to support. Let's see. Yeah, go
I was
ahead.
just add something. One of the things that we do here at school is, and I'm sure other schools do it as well, is we have an information sheet that families fill out in the beginning, and that helps us get to know them on paper first. And that helps us to be able to ask those very important questions, to know that yes, they're from another culture, because someone can look like they're from another culture, but actually be raised in the American way, I guess you can say.
Mhm.
You know, so that helps us a lot. You know, we also ask the question, has your child been through any, you know, big changes, any traumas in their life? So that we will be prepared to help that child, you know, obviously prepared to ask the parents, hey, can you elaborate with us on, if you don't mind sharing what happened? So that way we can help and be ready for those social emotional outbursts that may come from something that may trigger that child to, you know, react that way.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, especially when we're first starting out with families, they may not be as open to sharing those things. But, throughout the school year, we can, recheck in and see where we're at if they want to share that information, if we're noticing some behaviors that don't quite line up. Um, but I like the idea of having a sheet that they answered those kind of tougher questions on. And Casey said the big two she gets are sharing and developing the words and actions to communicate what they want or need. Absolutely. Hi, Miss Blanc. It's good to see you on today. All right. So then we're going to think about, well, this is actually a lot of what we were just talking about, but it is important it is going to be important to include family and cultural values when we are planning and implementing the social skill instruction. So we're going to want to consider how we are going to learn about our families and the cultural values they hold as it relates to social skills. So whether that's a parent conference, whether that's a sheet that they fill out, however you want to do that, just we do want to have those conversations, and we do want to ask those kind of harder questions. And then we want to think through, how are we ensuring that our instruction is culturally sustaining? So, how are we supporting children who might have different cultural values, and making sure that, their values are upheld and celebrated? Any questions on making sure that we are being culturally responsive to our students and our families? All right. As we continue to go on, of course, if something comes up, any questions that come up for you, please make sure you ask so that we can give you all the information that you're going to need for today. We're going to jump into the next section where we take a look at the stages of learning new skills. So this is going to be very specifically for social emotional skills, but a lot of it can be applied to almost any skills, academics or, well, academics. So academics or social emotional skills. All right, so we want to think through that when a child is dealing with a social conflict, it typically follows along this pathway. So we start with the child here. We're going to want to teach any kind of new skills while they are calm, while they are collected, while they are comfortable. When a situation happens, when a social situation happens, the child is going to increase in their anxiety, and they're going to peak at the top of that anxiety or at the top of that sadness or at the top of that anger, and then they're going to calm back down. When they're at the peak of that anger or sadness or frustration, that is not going to be the right time to try and teach a new skill, no matter what the skill may be, breathing, looking at a picture book. This is not going to be the appropriate time to teach a new skill. Instead, we're going to wait for them to calm back down, and then we might consider teaching them that new skill to use for the next time that they get frustrated or the next time that they get mad or sad. And when we notice that it's happening again, when we notice that a crisis is happening and they are starting to get upset, as they start to escalate, we're going to prompt them to use that skill that we have taught them. So, Miss Shy, I see you're crying. Remember, we practiced our 5 breaths the other day. Go ahead and take your 5 breaths. I'll do it with you. Go ahead and model it. Go ahead and walk them through it. Prompt them to use that skill that you did teach them while they were calm. So, for example, if we've got a group of children in a classroom, we've got Trey, he's going to be drawing a picture with some of the markers. And Blair wants the very specific marker that Trey is using. And when Blair grabs that marker, she accidentally drew a line on Trey's paper. So Trey hits Blair, and Blair starts to yell to get the teacher's attention. We might at this point say things like, use your words, or hitting is not okay, or say you're sorry, or ask nicely if you want something. So it's often that at this point with the crisis that teachers try to teach new social skills. But when we are so upset and frustrated, our brains are not prepared to learn those social skills or emotional skills. We have to be in a very calm and comfortable space to make that happen. So, when the incident has already happened, when the children are already upset, they're not going to be very likely to learn that new skill. And Blair might also find that the teacher is reinforcing her behavior because she's getting attention. So she might say something, think to herself something along the lines of, wow, I might do this again so I can get the teacher's attention. So with our social emotional skills, we're going to teach them at calm parts of the day and practice them throughout the day while the child is calm and able to engage in that learning opportunity. We do not want to try and teach it at the very peak of that crisis or when they're the most upset. I think about your own personal self. If you're fighting with somebody or you're crying or you're really upset about something, having somebody tell you, hey, calm down, doesn't really work. But if we've been taught, hey, and we practice, right? Maybe you might have seen a breathing strategy online, or you might have seen a mindfulness thing that you've been practicing a couple of times a week now. And you start to escalate, and somebody prompts you with, hey, I know you've been working on that breathing thing. Let's try that breathing thing. Then you know what exactly is the behavior is expected of you. But if you are at that peak of that and somebody's telling you, hey, calm down, or try this instead, it's not going to be as effective. And the same works with children in this scenario. Are there any questions about when we should teach social emotional skills?
I don't have a question, Katie. I just wanted to comment that these strategies actually do work. I have a little girl who's has difficult time expressing her emotions. So she cries very loud. It's like a screaming type of cry. And of course, then everybody puts their hands over their ears.
Mm.
You know, I've taught her that it's okay for her to have those feelings because it is okay for her to feel the way she's feeling. And that, if she needs to cry loud, that she can come and stand like right next to the door in the hallway of our pod and get her emotions out and everything. And that's actually what she does. I mean, now when she starts getting upset, she just goes over there. And it's amazing how she is really learning over, the past several weeks of how to regulate herself and knowing, okay, I'm getting ready to get really upset. Let me go over here. And it also gives her a chance to calm down. And of course, either me or the other teacher, we always go over and talk to her about how she's feeling so that she can share with us and we can help her. So these strategies of pre-teaching or teaching after they've calmed down and talking to them about how they're feeling and helping them to have a solution, it really does work.
Yeah. Thanks for the testimony, Gloria. Yeah, we won't go into very specifics today on self-regulation. Today is really going to be talking about just preparing to teach those items, and we'll go into the more details over the next couple months. But I'm glad to hear that you have had success in your classroom with this as well. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say about teaching children social emotional skills? All right. I don't see anything in the chat box at the moment, and I didn't see anybody unmute, so we will keep going. So there are going to be a couple of stages for teaching new skills. This is accurate for almost anything that you can teach somebody. And so we're gonna walk through these real quick. So we need to think about when to teach social emotional skills, but we also need to consider how those skills are learned in order to decide how often we need to teach these skills. So the stages of learning can be described as show and tell. And this is going to be the early acquisition stage where children need a skill explained and demonstrated. The practice makes perfect refers to the need to have many meaningful opportunities to practice and build fluency. And then after that, after they've got a lot of practice using it, they move into the you got it stage. It describes the stage of learning when a child knows a skill well enough to use over time and in new situations. Before any of that can happen, though, the teacher needs to identify what skill they want to teach and then plan for those skills. So for that acquisition stage, to support the children's use of new skills, we want to explain and demonstrate the skill or concept and encourage the child as they attempt to learn the skills. Skills can be very, very easily lost at this stage. So we've got to really support and encourage them to use this new skill. We might demonstrate the skill through examples and non-examples, either through role play or puppets. Kids love puppets, but they also really love role play. So you might have them role play out the right way to ask for a toy. And they would also role play the wrong way to ask for a toy. Examples and non-examples are both really helpful for children to see kind of the appropriate way versus the inappropriate way to use this skill. Our planned and intentional teaching, we want to think through, major social emotional skills like friendship skills, emotional literacy, self-regulation, or problem solving. We want to consider how to plan for teaching that. So when are we going to teach these skills? This is going to be kind of throughout the day, kind of random. Are we going to use a book and teach this during large group time? Are we going to have a small group time and do just a couple of kids for a social skill lesson? How are you going to embed this in your routines or your transitions throughout the day? And then how are you going to teach it? Are you going to model it? Are you going to have the children model it? Are you going to set up opportunities to practice with different materials? How are you going to provide feedback to encourage them to continue to practice this skill? These are all things we really want to think about with planned and intentional teaching. There's going to be times where naturally occurring opportunities present themselves, and you can certainly utilize those as frequently as possible. But when we are working on a targeted social emotional skill, we want to plan and intentionally teach that skill as well. Once a child acquires a new skill, we have to give them the opportunity to practice it. So we might prompt them to use those new skills in new situations. This way that they're able to use the skill across a variety of scenarios and spaces. Instruction and practice opportunities should be offered throughout the day. So every day should include instruction on social emotional skills. And we want to make sure that we provide many opportunities to practice those skills. So we could do small groups, large groups and small groups to offer different ways for the children to learn those items. Modeling and role playing could be done, as during circle time or even during the dramatic play center. And the teacher would support the children in practicing those skills with their peers, whether it be through group activities, daily routines, or across settings. So remember, planned, intentional, and systematic instruction throughout the day with multiple peers and adults. So it's going to help them with that acquisition stage, preparing them for fluency in order to use that new skill across different people and different settings. And that's when we know that they've got it. So positive descriptive feedback, we really want to encourage in order to let the child know that the behaviors that they're learning and that they're using and engaging in are appropriate. So positive descriptive feedback should include our attempt to describe the appropriate behavior in very specific, observable terms. We want to state that feedback in a very positive, sincere, and enthusiastic manner. Then deliver that feedback intentionally and consistently, and then individualize the feedback based on the child's needs. So for example, we might say something like, Miss Gloria, you asked Trey for a turn. That was such a kind thing to do, right? I'm acknowledging the child, I'm describing their behavior, and I'm stating why it's important. For children who are dual language learners, we might consider providing that positive descriptive feedback in the child's home language so that it might be more effective. I'm not saying you have to be fluent in Spanish or Creole or Arabic or anything like that. It's very easy nowadays to find, short phrases that you can learn in order to encourage the children in your classroom. All right, so as children learn to use social emotional skills, it is important to provide them with opportunities to reflect on how they use that skill. So reflection helps children think through how their interactions affected their peers. It also helps them make connections to the use of those skills in real life. So this could be done during large group, small group transitions, or really any time that you have the attention of the children. We might prompt that reflection by reporting some interactions that we saw earlier in the day and asking questions like, I saw friends sharing toys and using kind words during center time. What was something you saw someone do to be a friend during centers? Or what happened today when Francis didn't have a chair to sit in at home living? And so we give them the opportunity to reflect on how they themselves use the practices or how they saw their peers use the practices, and having either small or large group discussions on that. This is going to be a very short video, less than a minute, but this is going to be an example of a teacher guiding children in reflecting on helping a friend. Let me make sure the sound is on.
Tegan has been such a good helper. When Brianna walked in, she went and grabbed her center tag and said, "Here you go, Brianna." Right? Wasn't that nice, Brianna? Did you tell her thank you? I didn't even tell Tegan. She grabbed it all on her own. So clap for Tegan. She also helped Monroe. Monroe walked in the room and she grabbed her center tag for her. And that was very nice. Clap for Tegan again. Good job, Tegan. You're being a super friend. I got lots of friends. Layla was helping a friend out. Tegan was helping her friend out. Let's see who else is going to help a friend out. If you see a friend that needs help and they can't put a dress on, or they can't put the blocks away because it's so heavy, you can go up to him or go up to her and say, "Can I help you, please? Do you need help?" And if they say, "No, I don't need help," or they say, "No, thank you," it's okay. They just don't want any help right now. They're still your friend, but they just want to try to do it themselves, okay?
All right, so what are your thoughts about this video? What did we like about the teacher's guided reflection, or what could he do to improve the reflection?
One of the things I liked, he didn't just acknowledge one child, he acknowledged the other child that he saw that had also been being a kind, helpful friend, and he encouraged the others to do it. I also like the way he gave them words to use to reflect, yes, I want help, or no, thank you, because it is important. A lot of times children will want to help other kids, but sometimes kids don't want help. And I try to teach my kids that's okay. You say no, thank you. And yeah, so I mean, I like the little video. Thought he did a good job.
Thanks, Gloria. Does anybody else have any thoughts about what went well, or what adjustments you might have made differently?
I like that, kind of like what Gloria was saying, how he gave them the words and then also let them know, like, even if they say no, they're still your friend. They just don't want the help right now. So I'm glad that he clarified that as well.
Yeah, being very proactive on the friendship skill. Thanks, Shy. Casey said, I like that his instructions were clear and easy to understand for the children. Yep. Okay.
Tegan had
So once children are fluent with their new skills, they need to be able to use those skills in order to maintain them without support or prompting from an adult. So when children apply these new skills to new situations, people, activities, or settings, they are demonstrating that they have a generalized understanding of these skills. So a student might learn a new skill at the child center, and then generalize that skill by using it at home. So that's a different setting for them. Or they might use that skill with a grandparent, and they're generalizing that skill with different people. So teaching each skill goes through those learning stages, but it does require very intentional, purposeful planning on our part. So we want to think through, how can we maintenance and generalize these skills that we're teaching? When can we use those new skills so that the children have opportunities to acquire those skills and become fluent with their new skills? So we're going to continue to plan opportunities for children and practice using their new skills throughout the day, so that they can show that they have that generalization and understanding. Also note, we want to make sure that we take advantage of both planned and unplanned opportunities. So those naturally occurring opportunities are always really helpful. And so we're gonna recap here and wrap up for the day. Today's session, we really went through the stages of learning. So making sure that they are acquiring those new skills by showing and telling them examples versus non-examples. We're going to build their fluency by giving them many opportunities to practice those new skills. And then once they're able to use it in new settings or with new people, they have moved into that maintenance and generalization stage. And we're going to, for that, provide them opportunities to continue to use those new skills in different situations or different places. So that is going to wrap up our session for today. Just so you guys know, with the next couple of pyramid model training sessions, the next one here in February, we will be diving into friendship skills as well as emotional literacy. And then the one in March, we will go through self-regulation and anger management, as well as problem-solving skills. So we'll really start to dive deep into what those skills look like and how to teach them. So this is going to wrap up our introduction to social emotional skills. This is my contact information. Again, my name is Lexi Longeri, and we're going to go ahead and drop the evaluation in the chat box. This is going to be how you receive your in-service certificate for today's training. So when you complete that, you'll put the email address that you would like the certificate sent to. As soon as you complete the evaluation, you should receive your in-service certificate in your email. Check your spam folder. Sometimes it does end up in there. This is going to wrap up our session for today. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or needs? Got a note. I'm going to stop recording.